It was a hot June day in 1969 at Havana's Jose Marti Airport, where two young friends, Armando Socarras Ramirez and Jorge Perez Blanco, waited anxiously in the tall grass just off the runway. They were both teenagers. Armando was 17 and Jorge was 16, but they had a burning desire to escape from Cuba, and they had been planning for months to stow away on Iberia Airlines flight number 904, a weekly non-stop flight from Havana to Madrid. As they watched the DC-8 airplane approach them, the roar of the jet engines filled their ears with a deafening noise. It was now or never. They had carefully prepared for this moment and knew what to do. They wore rubber-soled shoes to help them climb up the wheels of the plane, and they carried ropes to secure themselves inside the wheel well. They had even stuffed cotton in their ears to protect themselves from the piercing sound of the engines. As the plane turned around and headed toward the runway, Armando and Jorge looked at each other with a mix of excitement and fear. The moment they had been waiting for had finally arrived. They could feel their hearts pounding as they watched the grass around them being flattened by the force of the jet blast. "Let's run!" Armando shouted to Jorge, and they sprang into action. With adrenaline pumping through their veins, they sprinted toward the plane, carefully avoiding the airport security personnel who were patrolling the area. They dashed onto the runway and sprinted toward the left-hand wheels of the momentarily stationary plane. As Jorge scrambled up the 42-inch high tires, Armando realized that there was only enough room for one person in the wheel well. "I'll try the other side," Armando shouted, and he quickly climbed onto the right wheels, grabbing onto a strut to steady himself. As the plane began to roll forward, Armando pulled himself into the semi-dark well, trying to find a place to secure himself. The noise from the engines was deafening, and he could feel the vibration of the plane as it gained speed. As the plane became airborne, Armando felt the scorching hot double wheels begin to fold into the compartment where he was hiding. He tried to flatten himself against the overhead as they came closer and closer, but in a moment of desperation, he pushed at them with his feet. However, the wheels were too powerful, and they pressed him against the roof of the well. Armando thought he would be crushed, but at the last moment, the wheels locked in place, and the bay doors beneath them closed, plunging him into darkness. Armando found himself wedged in a tangle of conduits and machinery that was like a spaghetti-like maze. He couldn't move enough to tie himself to anything, and he was completely at the mercy of the plane. As he caught his breath, the sudden drop of the bay doors caught him off guard. The wheels stretched out into their landing position, leaving him holding on for dear life as the plane swung over the abyss. The questions raced through his mind. Had he been spotted? Was the plane turning back to hand him over to Castro's police? But just as suddenly as they had opened, the bay doors began to close again. As the wheels began retracting, he noticed a small space among all the machinery where he could safely squeeze in. It was a tight fit, and he could scarcely breathe, but he knew he had found a spot to hide. As he waited, he couldn't help but think about the danger of his situation. The noise was head-splitting, and he regretted not wearing warmer clothes as he swallowed some aspirin tablets. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he touched one of the tires and found that it had cooled off. It was a relief, but the danger was far from over. He still had a long way to go before he could truly feel safe. But for now, he was just grateful to have found a small measure of shelter among the machinery. In the cockpit of the DC-8, Captain Valentin Vara del Rey, a seasoned pilot at 44 years old, settled in for a routine overnight flight. With 147 passengers and a crew of 10 on board, the flight was expected to last 8 hours and 20 minutes. The takeoff was normal, with the aircraft lifting off at a speed of 170 miles per hour. However, just after liftoff, something unusual caught the attention of Captain Vara del Rey. A light on the instrument panel remained on, indicating a problem with the retraction of the landing gear. Concerned, the control tower contacted the captain, asking if he was having difficulty. Vara del Rey confirmed the issue, stating that there was an indication that the right wheel hadn't closed properly. He lowered and raised the landing gear again, and this time the red light blinked out. Satisfied that the issue had been resolved, the captain turned his focus to climbing to the assigned cruising altitude. As the aircraft leveled out, Vara del Rey observed that the temperature outside was a bone-chilling 41 degrees below zero. Despite the minor hiccup with the landing gear, the captain remained calm and focused, determined to safely navigate the remainder of the flight. As Armando shivered uncontrollably in the freezing cold, he couldn't help but wonder if his friend Jorge had successfully made it into the other wheel well. He reflected on how he had ended up in such a desperate and perilous situation. Growing up in Havana, Armando came from a poor family. His father was a plumber, and he had 4 brothers and a sister. Their home consisted of just one large room, and food was scarce and rationed. Despite the difficulties, Armando found joy in playing baseball and taking walks with his girlfriend, Maria Esther, along the seawall. At the age of 16, the government sent him to vocational school in Betancourt, a village in Matanzas province, where he was supposed to learn welding. However, classes were frequently interrupted as they were sent to work in the sugarcane fields. Despite the setbacks, Armando persevered and was determined to make a better life for himself and his loved ones. Armando's desire for freedom was strong, despite his young age. He was tired of living in a state that controlled every aspect of his life. He dreamed of pursuing his passion for art and living in the United States with his uncle. Armando knew that many Cubans had succeeded in America and hoped to be one of them. As the time for his draft approached, he became more determined to escape the island. But how could he do it? There were only 2 flights allowed from Havana to Miami each day, with a waiting list of 800,000 people. The government also viewed those who signed up to leave as traitors, making life even more difficult for them. Just when Armando's hopes seemed bleak, he met George at a baseball game in Havana. They struck up a conversation, and Armando discovered that Jorge shared his disillusionment with Cuba's oppressive system. "The system takes away your freedom forever," Jorge complained. Jorge told Armando about the weekly flight to Madrid, and the 2 buddies had scoped out the airport twice. During one of their visits, they witnessed a DC-8 taking off, and as luck would have it, the plane flew directly over them, with its wheels still down. Armando couldn't resist quipping that there was enough room in there for him. Fast forward to the present moment, and Armando was now lying in the pitch-black coldness, high up above the vast Atlantic Ocean, well over 5 miles in the air. They had been airborne for about an hour, and Armando was feeling woozy. He couldn't believe that just a few hours prior, he had been pedaling through the rain with Jorge, hiding out in the grass. His mind wandered, and he began to wonder about the safety of Jorge, his parents, and Maria Esther. As his thoughts swirled, he gradually drifted off into unconsciousness. As the sun began to rise over the vast Atlantic, it cast a radiant golden glow on Iberia's DC-8 aircraft, with its striking silver and red exterior. The plane was soaring high above Portugal's coast, bringing an end to its 5,563-mile journey. Captain Vara del Rey announced to the passengers over the intercom that they were on schedule to arrive at Madrid's Barajas airport by 8 a.m., and that the weather there was sunny and delightful. As they passed over Toledo, Vara del Rey began to lower the landing gear, causing the plane to rattle as the wheels hit the slipstream, and a 200 miles per hour turbulence swirled through the wheel wells. The DC-8 then smoothly transitioned into its final approach, with a sudden spurt of flame and smoke from the tires as it touched down at around 140 miles per hour. It was an impeccably executed landing, without a single bump. After a quick post-flight check, Captain Vara del Rey descended the ramp steps, and together with his crew, waited by the nose of the plane for their ride to arrive. A soft, muffled sound caught the attention of Jose Rocha Lorenzana, a security guard stationed nearby. Looking around, he saw the crumpled figure of Armando Socarras Ramirez lying on the concrete apron beneath the plane. Rushing to the scene, Lorenzana was the first to reach the motionless body. When he touched his clothes, they were frozen as stiff as wood. All he did was make a strange sound, a kind of moan. Captain Vara del Rey, who had been waiting by the nose of the plane, rushed over in disbelief as he saw the unconscious boy being taken away in a truck. He couldn't believe it at first, but then he went over to see him. He had ice over his nose and mouth. As he watched the rescue effort, the captain repeatedly muttered to himself, "Impossible! Impossible!" After falling out of the wheel well and hitting the concrete at the Madrid airport, Armando's next memory was waking up at the Gran Hospital de la Beneficencia in downtown Madrid, barely alive. His temperature was so low that it didn't register on the thermometer. He asked if he was really in Spain and where his friend Jorge was. Unfortunately, Jorge is believed to have been knocked down by the jet blast while trying to climb into the other wheel well, and to have been put in prison in Cuba. Doctors were amazed that Armando survived. His condition was compared to that of a patient undergoing deep freeze surgery, a delicate process performed only under carefully controlled conditions. Dr. Jose Maria Perez, who treated him, called Armando's survival a medical miracle. Experts cited at the time estimated that at an altitude of 29,000 feet and a temperature of 41 degrees below zero, a person would only be expected to live a few minutes. An engineer said the chances of not being crushed by the retracting double wheels were 1 in a million. Armando was truly lucky to be alive. Against all odds, he recovered and was soon up and about, playing cards with his police guard and reading letters from people all over the world, including a girl from California who called him a hero but also cautioned him about the danger he had put himself in. Armando's family in the United States was eager to help him. His uncle in New Jersey invited him to come live with him, and thanks to the assistance of the International Rescue Committee, Armando was able to make the journey safely. Armando Socarras Ramirez is doing well these days. He's grateful for his new life and wants to give back to the country that welcomed him with open arms. He's grateful to be living in a place where freedom is palpable. Despite his happiness, Armando still thinks of his friend Jorge. Both men were aware of the dangers they faced when they attempted to escape Cuba. But for them, it was worth taking the risk. Even after everything he's been through, Armando says he would try to escape again if he had to. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to check out the other great content on our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.